and there we go, our snapshot training and documentation call. So what we're going to be covering is really the foundations of snapshots and everything to do with from building, documenting, curating, basically deep diving into existing snapshots. We'll go through different snapshots you can purchase in HighLevel through the marketplace. We'll go through some Pro Tools snapshots, snapshots you have in your account. This is really an opportunity for everyone to pick our collective brain on, the best ways to manage your snapshots and snapshot systems. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So Michael, just a little bit of context. Last week, I asked everyone to bring a snapshot to the call that they wanted to take a look at. And also, we are going to start sharing that document, which is the snapshot, the basic snapshot documenter. So let me go ahead and get that shared to the group. I have to find which one is my version versus which one's your version. All right, perfect. Got it right here. Let me hit the share button, copy link. All right, so I'm going to drop this in the Zoom chat as well as in the Facebook chat for those of you who are on Facebook Live with us. And it may be share button briefly loud for a second. I just had to mute my Facebook. So that is a link to the simple snapshot documenter that we're going to be working with throughout the series of these calls. We will be kind of resetting the room every so often and going through different facets. So no two snapshot calls are going to be the same. So I'm really excited to go ahead and get started. So Michael, would you mind sharing your screen with that document and kind of walk us through your logic in building it and how it works?
Cool. I will do that. So basically, with some of you guys might know me from around the high level space. I've been documenting for about 5 years. And the reason why I say I've been documenting is the very first thing that I ran into as a problem when working for an agency was I started onboarding people, and after about 5 or 6 clients, I started thinking I'm going to lose track of everything. I don't see me going past 10. And what do you know? We didn't get past 10 for a very, very long time. And the very first thing that I thought of doing to solve that problem is maybe I should write some of these things down. And so what I ended up with was something that looks kind of like this. What I actually ended up with was something that looks like an Airtable that gets really complicated and does all this really cool stuff. And but a lot of people, when they're first starting out, they don't need the crazy tools. I have these really crazy tools that I've built that are for advanced. You can get AI in it. You can manage like hundreds of snapshots or like thousands of assets. But at the end of the day, what you really need to do is document just 5 things in a snapshot. You need to know, one, what is this asset named? And when you say asset, a workflow, a tag, a custom field. Number two, you need to know what it does, right? Simple, 1 or 2 lines. Hey, what does this workflow do? It takes calendar appointments and it follows up with them 3 times before the appointment. Cool, need to know that. Second thing you need to know is how do you set up that asset when you launch a new client account? So if you don't know that, it's not written down, it's very easy to get lost. You might need to say, hey, when an appointment comes into this workflow, we have to assign a user to it. So when we're setting up a new account, you loaded the snapshot, you need to know every single step that needs to be done for that asset. A trigger link, hey, do you have to set up a specific custom field, or do you have to put in a very specific link into that trigger link? And if you don't write those things down when you first get started, it it's really easy to keep track of. Oh, we got like, yeah, there's a couple things we got to do, but I got to take care of that. But once you get up to about 100 assets, 200 assets, if you haven't been writing those little tiny little steps down that seem inconsequential, what you end up with is like 50 or 60 of those inconsequential things that never actually get set up. So you need the name, you need the description, you need to know how to set it up. You also need to know, is it updatable? This is a big one. You need, when you have a snapshot, likely you're not just going to leave it as is. The whole purpose of a snapshot is that you can push it out to people and then upgrade it, add new things to it, fix things, and push those changes out. The problem that you're going to run into really quick is that if you don't know what you can safely overwrite without messing up your client's accounts, when it comes to updating, you're going to get stuck because you're not going to know what to change, what you can change, and what's safe to just write over. So you might have a workflow that has customizable templates that need to be edited. Well, if you edit that on the client account, you can no longer push changes to it. You can't push out a change without some manual work involved. So by documenting what workflows or what parts of the snapshot you can actually edit safely, that will focus you on understanding how scalable your snapshot is. So for instance, if a workflow isn't updatable, but you might want to update it, maybe you can break that workflow into two parts, the customizable part, and then maybe the underlying logic. The underlying logic is the customizable part. And then the content that the clients might then want to change. And those are the main things. So it is just a simple spreadsheet. You know, I made it a little bit prettier. I added some drop downs and you know, a little dashboard, a little mini dashboard and all that, and even some status of that. But at the end of the day, if you capture that information that I just explained to you, that's about 80 to 90% of what you need to get started. And so that's the simple snapshot manager. And it is just writing down that basic information that everyone needs to do their job.
So what kind of assets, like how granular do you get when you're talking about, because you can go as far as like global sections, or I mean, you got custom fields, custom values, all those different things. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have a lot of options in there.
You need all of them. The answer is you need all of the ones that are in the snapshot. If it's in the snapshot, and when we say in the snapshot, what do we mean? We mean when you go and push that snapshot out or you create that snapshot, it gives you a list of all the fields. You need to have all of those things. Now, are there some things that you can get away with? Sure. But the second part that that I advocate for is that you really, when you're dealing with scalability, you don't have a lot of agency to skip things, because everything you skip is something that's now in your head. It's knowledge that only exists here if you don't write those things down. And what you're creating is a liability, a bigger problem for you down the road when you want to hand that knowledge off to someone. You're not going to remember all those things you didn't write down. So the short answer is, yeah, you have to have every single asset. If you're going to put it in your snapshot, you need to write it down and document it.
Now, when you're talking about like setup notes and settings and extra details and version notes, um, how how much time should I spend on each? Like, because I guess I'm imagining a snapshot, right? And there's 1,000 assets in it. If you have, like, I'm sure, you know, like Steve, for example, who I know is building or has built a snapshot for loan officers, mortgage loan officers, like he probably has, you know, near 500 to 1,000 assets. Like, how much time do you spend on it? And then what does the deployment of the snapshot look like once you have it documented? Like, is it, obviously it's going to be easier, but do you from here create a checklist? Like, how do you actually
Yes.
deploy it?
So there's a lot of questions you just asked, but the first thing is to understand the principle is that it's the minimum viable documentation needed to get the job done. Um, and the minimum viable documentation is really kind of test is simple. Are you able to scale this? Yes or no. If you're able to scale it, then that's how much work you need to do and how much detail you need. Um, I always say minimum viable because if it's scalable, it's either scalable or it's not. And if you're running into problems doing it a way where you're just like you get going back to like skipping things. But my thing is like when I say a description of the asset, I don't want the chat GPT version when you go in and ask, the workflow AI assistant, explain this workflow. I don't want that. That's not useful. What we need is we need something that tells that a human has done to say to explain what each part does, and it could be a sentence or two. When we talk about settings, I don't need every single setting possibly written down. Now, if you have that, awesome. What we need are the important settings that make or break whether this system is scalable. So if there's a workflow and it's important for it to have re-entry allowed, and that's like an important setting, write that down. Like that's like, especially if it's novel or different. Maybe there's a certain one, maybe all of your settings are allow re-entry on, but there's specific ones that aren't. You need to write, those are some things that you want to write down. When we're talking about setup notes, yeah, this is about. So first off, before I get into the setup notes section, does that any questions on the idea of like that minimum documentation? So documenting everything that's important, but keeping it relatively small and then only adding more. Any questions on that part there, Mario?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I have a habit of like being overly detailed and stuff, so I think like it helps me to have not as much room to be able to type stuff out.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense. Like you don't need to document, especially like recurring settings or stuff that stays static. Like you're not changing the padding constantly. You're not changing, um, some of these
Yeah.
different aspects of it. But if there is something modifiable, essentially, you're like the link in the image URL. That's something that you would put in a setting, correct?
Yeah, so this is a very basic, like I also kept this one relatively simple because the truth is that you're going to modify, you need to be able to scale your documentation to what's actually important to you, right? So one of the things that I was saying is like, yeah, if you have a lot of workflows where the URL path is, and you're tying that to your custom values, you need to document that. Another thing I'll say too with documentation is it comes to the goal that you're trying to do. If you're trying to scale a snapshot, right, then that means you're probably going to be hiring people. And if you're hiring people to work on your snapshot, you need to make sure that they know what they've built because it's really easy to build things in HighLevel. I don't think anyone has I think most people when they're building, they don't find it too hard to build. But by forcing you to document what you've built, it makes sure that you actually understand why you've built that thing and it's a good feedback loop for you. So let's say you're working with somebody, right? They go build a bunch of stuff, but they didn't by having to write down, hey, this is what the snapshot does. This is how it's set up. That process of having to think that through is what's going to make them go, oh, wait a second, this is going to be really hard to set up. I don't think that's going to fit with our, like, we want to keep this really light, but this is adding a lot of setup notes. So when you're so this goes back to a big thing is you're saying, hey, we got 1,000 assets. That sounds like a lot of work to document. Well, that makes a question of, is it worth building 1,000 assets? Are we charging enough? Because if you're charging enough and the juice is worth the squeeze, the documentation burden should make sense. And it scales with the difficulty of the problem. If you're solving a simple problem like database reactivation, you don't need a huge documentation, right? I mean, you should still document, but your documentation is going to take relatively short because your snapshot's really small. So that's the,
So
yeah.
that brings up a really good point about overkill versus to the point and kind of that. So one of the things that I talk about a lot on these coaching calls across all of them is JIT development, just in time development. And I learned that phrase from actually during COVID. I was working with some agricultural companies, specifically on the like farm to table, basically all the food that they were producing, nobody was buying it because grocery stores were shutting down.
Hmm.
And one of the logistics companies I was working with told me about JIT fulfillment, just in time fulfillment, which is a way to have everything come in all at once when it's needed, but not before it's needed. So you produce on demand and
Yes.
scale with that. And so when you're building a snapshot, I think one of the really important things to be cognizant of is your customer doesn't know. The customer that you're selling to is not the customer that you think they are. And I say that, and what I mean when I say that is people have a habit of building out snapshots that are these crazy, insane, just like, 1,000 features and every module and workflow you can think of. And then like 3% of the snapshot gets used.
Yes. And so that comes down to goal setting is always the most important thing in business, right? What's the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing? Because if you're just growing, and by the way, the word scale here is something that's really important. If you're just growing, all right, you're getting your first couple customers, growing your business is not scaling. You're not scaling right now. So you're not needing to go to the level of detail that saying someone who wants to scale needs to, right? You don't need to build 100 features. You need to build one feature. You don't need to ensure that you can roll this out to 1,000 customers. You need to just learn what it's like to get that out to one customer and then five and then 10. But once you start using the word scale, right? We start using the word scale. Well, now we're in a different territory because a lot of people think, we'll grow now, we'll scale later. And it doesn't work that way. What it works is that we have a goal of scaling this product, which means we need to do things now, document things, because we already know what the problems are going to be. We know that we're going to bring on a team and our whole operation shuts down if we can't hand things off quickly and easily. We know that we're going to need to update our snapshots, so we cannot afford to not document every little detail right now. We know that, and on and on and on and on, right? So you need to be very clear about your goals, and that will tell you how much documentation that you need to do. Now, I personally am at the spot where I'm always thinking scaling. So like even when I'm just building for myself and as a single, like if I'm my own client, I'm still documenting because I need to prove that I know what I've just built, right? I need to make sure I understand it. So anyway, that's the way that I'm saying it is that yeah, you need to only solve problems that actually exist. And if you're scaling, those problems exist and they need to be solved right now. But um, don't try and solve scalable problems until you know you're going to be scaling, right? Understand what features clients use and which features need to be in depth and fully structured out and have all the workflows broken out and module like that's very wise advice.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you've really hit home for me in this conversation so far is, are you familiar with the term technical debt?
I live it every day, brother. Yes, I
Yeah,
am
so
very
I
familiar.
figured that one would hit home with you. So, when you're building out your snapshots, and as we're going through this series, it's very important that you understand the technical debt is exponential. And I say that and by what I mean by technical debt is exponential, is that the longer you wait to start documenting your process and your procedure, the harder it gets long term to retroactively document that information. And because you not only now have to remember what you're documenting, but you have to remember why you're doing it. So one of the things that I've started doing as a software developer and just general like high level builder slash like creator of things is getting very granular about my updates documentation and keeping track every so often, keeping track of uh keeping track of what change, not only what changes I've made, but what my plans are for the future, what the priority is to execute. Because oftentimes, like especially when you're creating a snapshot, you will build all of these really awesome things, and then ultimately you don't remember why you built it, and it just
Yeah.
totally defeats the purpose.
So a big thing on that one is that's 100% that's 100% a problem is that you lose your way very fast if you don't have a North Star. If you don't, if you're building cool things or if you're building things client by client, you're going to run into problems. So what's really important is to always solve real problems that have significance. You can solve problems for people and then try and trump up the value and the dollar amount. But if you don't actually understand the problem that you're trying to solve for your clients in depth and you don't understand how valuable that problem is, and when we say how valuable the problem is, it's not just technically solving it, saying, oh, you need more leads? Well, here's a lead generation system. Solving the problem means understanding what is the day-to-day life of the contractor, dentist, lawyer, whoever you're building this thing for. What's the reality of the day-to-day life in their office? And does the way that you built the snapshot work for that everyday life? Because you could build a lead gen module in your snapshot, but if the way you did it uses a way that doesn't work for that team because maybe they're mobile and they're on the go all the time and they're never actually sitting down on their desktop and they don't have their bookmarks. They can't just bookmark this thing and that thing. It's like if they don't have all that access, you haven't solved the problem and you're going to have to end up things are going to end up bigger than you actually thought. So writing down why you're building things, dude, I agree with that. And it also helps you build less because sometimes it's like, hey, we don't need this. This no one's going to use it, or 5% of the people are going to use it. All right, we don't need to build it anymore. So yeah,
It also gives you time to think is one of the things that I found of value. Like when I'm building out, when I'm developing anything really, like whether it's software or a snapshot or a specific automation or something like that, because I built some pretty complex like integrated workflows in like N8N and various platforms, right? And I put sticky notes all over it. So that's the start of my documentation. And then I in Airtable or Google Sheets will by line item list out, each of the different pieces like you have shown with the description and the settings and all the, those different aspects. But what I find is that if I do also a rolling document of updates and changes and future plans and deficiencies, what I'm able to do is go back and think on decisions I made previously, decide if they were good or bad, and then
yes.
decide if the future actions are worth it.
Hmm.
Because you gain a lot of clarity by stepping back from a project at some point and putting it down and just going out for a cup of coffee, right? And then you come back from that cup of coffee and you're like, oh man, what was I working on? You pull up your rolling updates document and your snapshot or project documentation, and you're able to like reference back and be like, okay, this is why I did this. This is what I was thinking. What the heck was I thinking? That doesn't make
It
any
it
sense.
comes back to accountability. Are you a sort of person that embraces accountability, Or are you the sort of or are we running away from accountability because we know that if the truth came out, the thing that we think is important isn't? And documenting, as you said, helps you think through things and it forces you to be held, those ideas to be held accountable because it's very easy in business or in life to just make a decision and then when it doesn't turn out to just make another decision tomorrow and forget that you ever made that first decision. But the problem is that when we're changing our decisions in the moment, we're still holding on to that baggage, that technical debt, but we're just not addressing it. So by having that process of writing jot notes, even sticky notes, however it works for you, what it's doing is creating an accountability system in your building, and it forces you to reckon with and actually make decisions. Because the worst thing you can do is to build without to have some conflict about what you should do and then not make a decision.
Mhm.
Just change and move on. But by writing things down, you have to force yourself to saying, yes, we're no longer the goal of scaling. We don't actually want, we said we wanted to scale at the beginning of the project. No, we don't want to scale anymore. We just want to fix problems right now. That's cool. Make that decision. But what you don't want to do is we want to scale. But no, we don't want to scale. We just want to get some sales, short-term sales right now and get some things and features built out now. But yeah, we still want to scale. Well, you can't do both. You have to make a
Right.
decision.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think being decisive in and you said it earlier, having a North Star and starting, and this is something that maybe we can cover next week, is going through like a Miro diagram of a snapshot. And I've seen some of the like snapshot diagramming you've built. Um, Having an end goal in mind and then starting with your beginning and basically splitting it down the middle every single time until and going left or right of center so that you have to have somewhere you start and somewhere you end and a
Hmm.
way to say that this is complete. And I can't tell you, like, before I started working with you and really learned how to build a proper snapshot, I was building snapshots totally like just vibing on the snapshot basically. And what would end up happening is I made no real concrete decisions. I had no real end state. And so I built this like crazy overly complex. I remember my first snapshot that I built was like my first real snapshot was this insane human resources and recruiting snapshot. And it was
I
like, and you
remember.
were like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like I literally, I remember you being like, that's not the way that you're supposed to do this. And I was like, what do you mean? You're like, trust me. And I was like, no, that can't be the case. And you're like, no, trust me. And I was like, oh crap, he was right. But like when you start without a goal, when you start without an end or a beginning, you have no idea. And the customer journey is really the end and the beginning, right?
Yeah.
It's because the customer doesn't see the mechanics on the back end. All they see is like, I submitted a form and now I'm in the office, the doctor's office, and I'm getting a consultation.
You know what people also, it's funny you mentioned that, and I'm a very black and white person. I'm somewhat argumentative, some might say. And it's actually a defense mechanism because I don't think arguing a point of we should do it this, like if I think about me in that situation, I probably approached you wrong as well because I came at it from a dude, you're doing it wrong, do it my way. That's the right way. And that's actually not a good approach because what it then creates is a trust me, bro kind of scenario. But what you really need, what I've learned a lot in the last couple of years, is that when you have a documentation, it takes the personality out of it because what happens is instead of going, hey, someone comes and say, hey, why'd you build that, Mario? Why'd you build it this way, Mario? You can go, oh, well, when we agreed that this was the goal, when we said, hey, here's the map, I thought this was the map. This is what we said the way we needed to do. So I built it to support that. When you document things, when you have a disagreement with someone about which direction you should go, it gives you a tool to that's not just my opinion, your opinion, to go, well, wait, what was the decision we made that made us split? What was the piece of information we didn't have written down that made us have that disagreement? And oftentimes that mapping process of actually visually mapping it, like that's what I go to now. When I go to things, oh, we should do it this way. I don't say it because I think of it. I go back, well, what was the map that we agreed on? Does what I did it satisfy that or did it not? And this idea you're bringing, oh, that's a cool idea.
Right.
Does it fit? Yes or no? And now it's not, I think that's a stupid idea. It's now the map says that's a stupid idea. Don't, it's not me. You know what I'm saying? Or it's like, let's change the map. If we want to do this cool thing and it's worthwhile, let's invest the time to in the map. And now it's no
It
longer a
promotes
debate.
discussion
Yes.
as opposed, it promotes discussion as opposed to debate or argument.
Yes.
And I don't think you necessarily approached me wrong because I was completely off base and I needed someone to course correct me. So like I appreciate the course correction, but so don't feel bad. But like
No, but it just saying, I'm not using as example. I know we had a good relationship there, but just it does happen. I'm more just saying that because it does happen sometimes when we, for the audience as well, when we come at it from a disagreement, sometimes we don't approach it right. But yeah, I think thanks for that
no, that's totally
clarification.
fair. That's totally fair. But the discussion component when you're building snapshots is really critical. And this is one of the reasons why, like, so I'm in the process of building out what I would call in this case is a snapshot, right? Because it's a combination of workflows, funnel pages, forms, custom fields, custom values that accomplish a specific task. And it's fairly important in this case that I nailed it right the first time. And so one of the things that I've been really appreciative of is the discussion component behind picking everyone's brain and being able to like ask you for feedback, like we talked about earlier, being able to ask like Josh Satterley and Tracy Bauer and Jason Claybrook and all these other people that I've talked to so far. Um, because getting into a tunnel when you're building a snapshot is so easy,
Yes.
where you are so laser focused on the big there's a beetle, I think it's a beetle that moves so it was previously the fastest land speed, or it's had set the land speed by size record. And then they discovered that this microorganism moves faster, but um, it set the fastest originally up until like 2018. It had the fastest land speed record by size. And this critter moves so fast that it can only see directly in front of it. And it's completely blind to the left and the right, despite having like eyes on the left and the right. And because it can only process so much information that it has to focus exclusively on what's in front of it.
Hmm.
And so I feel like when we build snapshots, we get into that kind of mentality of a tunnel with blinders on.
And
And then you have to ask.
there's a reason why, and there's a reason why that happens. And you know what that reason is because they're going fast does solve a problem for a lot of business owners, right? We hear it all the time. Go fast, don't slow down. You got to sell, right? Sell, build, get resources, go. And that's what in business, that's good advice is going fast, getting momentum, right? The challenge is that why are you having to go fast? And
Mhm.
is the reason you have to go fast because you don't have the money? If the reason is that, then the word scale should be wiped out. Get the Will Smith me, right? Get that word out of your mouth. Don't, the scale thing, right? Don't use scale if you're in a scenario where we have to go fast because of money. If you need to go fast because you don't want to stagnate or be a perfectionist, that's fine, right? Because if your motivation is money, then that's the motivation for you building the snapshot, which means you're not incentivized to do the right thing. and to serve the client best. If going so going fast is a good thing, but it's not when you're trying to scale something. Is you need a different mindset. You do need your blinders on because the things that are going to tank you with high level scaling high level is not another $5,000 here or there. What's going to tank you, what's going to tank you is, man, I have 100 accounts. I have to rebuild them all manually if I want to do anything. And I'm signing up five more accounts here and there, and the costs are rising faster than I'm making money. So yeah, the going fast is it's understanding the motivation for why you're going fast. And that's usually where it comes down to, because it's real easy. It's like, hey, you don't want to slow down to think about this and talk about it, then you probably don't want to scale, dude, because we're gonna be this is what the real work's all about.
Oh man, that is like that hits so close to home when you talk about growing versus scaling and when to have your blinders on and when not to. And it's like when you're in growth phase and you need to establish that foundational base, like you need as much input as possible and feedback as possible so that you think of the things that you maybe, are falling off the bus or you haven't even brought on the bus yet. And then when you go into scale mode, you have to be hyper focused on achieving the mission. And growing and scaling ultimately involves like making very quick decisions, but making very quick decisions based on the foundational components of what you did previously. And
Yeah.
I feel like all of this, like while it is in a lot of ways like great SaaS and business advice in general, it's really helpful from a general like snapshot construction piece because I can't tell you how many times like I built out this platform, right? And I spent like a whole week. I did nothing but build out this piece of software. And I was like, this is going to be the greatest software in the world, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't have a plan behind it. I just said, here's my start, here's my nebulous end, and then the underpants gnomes took over. And it's like in the middle, I was like, some stuff is going to happen, and then magically I'll make money. And I used to do the same thing with snapshots. And what happens is like if you don't have the documentation behind it while you're putting the foundational pieces in place, you don't solicit that feedback. You don't ask for assistance or oversight in some capacity. When you get into scale mode, like the moment I hit the button to go scale the software, the entire platform, like a house of cards, just collapsed
Yeah.
because I forgot one foundational aspect of, and I mean we're talking like tens of thousands of lines of code, like a week of monster caffeine drinks, 20 hours a day, and doing nothing but just sitting there coding. And which a week in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of time until you know that I was augmented by AI. So I was coding at probably 20 times the speed of a normal developer.
Yeah.
And foundationally, I made one mistake in the beginning that completely just pulled on the thread and the entire thing unraveled.
This also comes back to go the other way as well, right? Is that if you're trying to scale something, um, but you don't have the foundational information, like those assumptions, you don't know those assumptions, the boots on the ground, you haven't worked with the clients enough. That's sometimes a thing of, hey man, you actually don't need to slow down right now. You do need to just plug away for the next couple weeks, next couple months, this quarter, and just go and execute. Build something, don't overthink of it, and get that data of what works and what doesn't. When you're coming to the snapshot conversation, it is more thoughtful. It's more, okay, we're bringing the people who understand the situation, who should have that knowledge of what works and what doesn't. Let's get that down. Let's solidify that and scale that. But if you don't know, because this is your, as you said, your vibe code and stuff, you're just going at it, right? You don't know what's possible because you haven't built that stuff yet. So going fast can work, but I appreciate too. Like for me, I always want to say, like for me, I like to go a little bit slower, even when I'm building and doing something new. But for not everyone listening, is that everyone's got their own little flow, but sometimes you do need permission to just go because all of the perfectionists in the audience are probably thinking, yeah, I got to document, got to go slow. And they're going to use that as an excuse not to get stuff out. Not like I'm guilty of that, right? Like you were talking to me about that earlier. It's like, I'm really bad at getting my own message out. It's like, yeah, because I go a little bit too slow sometimes. So it's a push pull, but knowing how to do both will make you a more rounded and more effective person. Um, but yeah.
I think that all really homes back to having a clearly, and this is one of the things that I've had to that I've learned over time in the SaaS world is having not just a North Star, but we as entrepreneurs and SaaSpreneurs, we have this ever growing to-do list, right? And when you're building a snapshot, it's so easy to have an ever growing to-do list of things that you want to put in your snapshot. And it's a very you and the key word that I said there is want. There needs to be a
Hmm.
very clear delineation between what is a want and what is a need, because you can
Yes.
accomplish a need. You can't really accomplish a want because you're always going to want more
Yes.
than what you like. You're like, oh, I built this module because I wanted to. Now I can just make it a little bit better because I want to, not quality or not quantitatively saying I have accomplished the spec that my client set forth. I don't need to add any more functions. So like yesterday when I was building my megabot, which is the for those of you that aren't or just are starting to follow me on Facebook and YouTube, megabot is make email great again, bot v1, which is a triage and classification system using AI for my email. And it's a project that I've been thinking of for a long time. And I realized when I started building it, like right at the beginning, that I didn't have a clearly defined goal. So I stopped and I said, okay, what is the MVP of this product? And I need to stop at the MVP and not just keep iterating on top of it, because that's how you end up with scope creep. And scope creep can be internal too. It's not even just customer facing, right?
Hmm.
Um, and building snapshots is the same way. Like when you're building out a system of any type, you need to very clearly identify what are the foundational needs. How do you meet those needs? And once you've met those needs, put a pin in that grenade and save it for later, because then you can retrospectively think about, what is that want a need? And okay, if I can convert that want from a want to a need, what is the definition of done for that need?
I think there's a lot of needs in this world. There's more needs that need serving than you'll ever, like if you dedicate yourself to serving others, there's more need in the world than you'll ever run out of. Yeah. But serving your own needs, well, as you said, will also never run out of things because you'll make them up as you go. So I think having that thing of serving others and keeping that in mind and keeping that humbleness to go, I do need to do things for other people. One, well, you'll get the best of both worlds. One, you'll actually be more effective. And two, you'll also always have something cool and fun to build and solve, but it'll be done in a more productive way rather than in a self-serving and navel-gazing way. So yeah, dude, that's powerful.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, I really like the conversation we've had so far. So we are just up on time here. We've got about 3 minutes left before I have to jump to another call, and so does Pachito. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. We've had anywhere between like 5 and 15 or 20 people on Facebook Live watching this video as well. Thank you to Peter and George who joined in today. Next week, we're going to kind of take it a step back and go through maybe some diagramming of snapshots and how to do a good Miro board. Or like we'll use like Mermaid chart or something like that and figure out like how does that translate into documentation and what things to be cognizant of. But just wanted to say thank you, Michael, for being on the call today. So you guys can expect Coach Michael will be on the call moving forward on Thursday. So be sure to invite your friends and colleagues. Thursdays are our snapshot time. Fridays, we have 3 calls, which are sales coaching with Andy Audate, build with Nuno Tavares and myself, where we dive into different platforms, N8N, HighLevel, and then we have SaaS and business coaching with Fur Patel. Mondays are open troubleshooting and question and answer for HighLevel. So we cover how to build workflows, how to troubleshoot them, fix AI agents, all sorts of stuff. Tuesdays are our advanced call. So in the evenings at 8 p.m. on Tuesday Eastern time, we do all sorts of advanced platforms and really just amazing AI work. And then Wednesday, we have foundations of AI as well as our GHL town hall. So be sure to sign up. I'll drop the link in the Facebook chat and on the YouTube for these coaching calls. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week and tomorrow. And again, thank you, Michael. Great to see you as always. And I will see you here in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Mario. I really appreciate the time you gave me today. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
You too, brother. See you, Peter. See you, George.
Thank you, boys. That was awesome.
Absolutely, brother. Good to talk to you. Bye,
Yeah,
guys.
see you all soon, man.